It was reportedly so chaotic that Fox News cut away from the live feed. That was the state of the breakfast Donald Trump hosted for the National Governors Association this morning, an event that already seemed destined for tension after days of him publicly attacking both Republican and Democratic governors who were planning to attend. What no one expected, however, was the Supreme Court stepping in that same morning and striking down his tariffs, a move that appeared to send him in a tailspin. During the speech, he lashed out at the court, reportedly shouting expletives in front of nearly every governor in the country, aside from a few he had pointedly excluded from the guest list. The controversy actually began even before the event, when Trump said Maryland Governor Wes Moore wasn't welcome at the White House, a claim Moore quickly pushed back on. And that was all before the speech spiraled into what many are now calling a full-blown meltdown.
Trump seems to be a bit obsessed with you right now. I don't know if you've noticed that. It's one way of putting it, I guess. I mean, he disinvited you from the White House National Governors Association dinner. He's been on a bit of a rampage, as was his White House press secretary, who I'm sure maybe he directed to do that, about blaming you for the Potomac sewage leak, which is a big issue, but it's not something that is under your jurisdiction. What is this all about, in your view?
I mean, I wish the president wasn't as obsessed with me, and he'd be more obsessed with the American people and what they're going through. He seems to be wholly obsessed with me. I just wish he'd be more obsessed with them. You know, if you look at the past few days, that we have introduced legislation and testified on legislation that ends the practice of price manipulation at supermarkets. So bringing the price down for supermarkets so people's data are not being used against them when they go into supermarkets. That in the past days that we have worked with Democratic and Republican governors to get PJM, the regional grid operator, to cap their price increases for not 2, but for the next 4 years. That we have focused on bringing new economic development avenues like the Sphere, which is coming to Maryland, which is going to generate about $1.3 billion annually once completed. During that same period of time, the President of the United States has decided to change the colors on Air Force One, has now installed a new ballroom, and probably has tweeted about me every 30 minutes. Like, this is absurd. And when the president says, that if Governor Moore asks me nicely to help with a sewage issue, which, by the way, is a breakage of a DC pipe on federal land, Maryland has nothing to do with this. My answer to the president is this: I'm asking you nicely, Mr. President, please do your job. And please stop looking at all of us to have to cover up for the type of inaction that we are seeing from this White House.
This isn't the first time Donald Trump has singled out Wes Moore. He's mentioned him repeatedly, often in ways that critics argue reflect a broader pattern in how he targets leaders of color. Months ago, when questions surfaced about the possibility of federal intervention in Maryland, Governor Moore pushed back publicly, even challenging Trump in a pointed exchange that clearly struck a nerve. So there was already tension between Trump and several Democratic governors heading into this event. But what made the breakfast even more surprising was that criticism didn't just come from Democrats. A Republican governor, Oklahoma's governor, also took shots at Trump, Congress, and what he framed as broader leadership failures. In many ways, the gathering seemed primed for conflict before it even began, and that's why it's worth hearing what that Republican governor had to say, especially before Fox ultimately cut away from the feed.
But, I think the American people want a president to give us real solutions, right? Let's stop the fighting. What are the real solutions? I tell people, some of my friends, when I'm back home, I'm like, it feels like we're a car racing towards a cliff. And right now, my party's driving, and the Democratic Party's in the passenger seat. And we're fighting over the control of the radio. And our car is racing towards the cliff here. And then, in 3 years, we may have a Democrat driving and the Republicans will be in the passenger. And we'll still be fighting over what's on the radio. Congress is not getting anything done. We haven't passed a balanced budget in Congress since the 90s. Right. Bill Clinton was the last time that we actually had a balanced budget.
A former governor.
So we literally have a crisis that's facing us, and nobody seems to be talking about it. So those are the things I think the American people want solutions on.
It's almost ironic. The governor was speaking broadly about how our politics have deteriorated over the past few years, and you can't help but wonder who played a major role in that shift. When he criticized Congress for being ineffective, it raised another obvious question: who has been in charge? With Republicans controlling Congress, the implication wasn't exactly subtle, even if he stopped short of saying it outright. This is especially notable because the Oklahoma governor has already been in Trump's crosshairs, labeled a rhino and a fake Republican. So tensions were already high heading into the event. In many ways, it felt doomed from the start. Then came the Supreme Court's decision, which only escalated matters. And despite repeated claims from Laura Trump about the administration's transparency, the event ended with reporters being ushered out and the live feed cut as Trump reportedly began shouting at members of the press.
People feel, more in line with this president and more like they can trust our federal government, where for so long, for so many decades, it felt like there was something kind of being held back. This president saying, let's put it all out there. So I'm paying attention too.
Laura, speaking of your father-in-law and President Trump, let's go to him now. He's in the state dining room as he has the governors there for a breakfast. I think we could have him here. Oh, they're framing up the shot, and here you go.
We're exiting out this door. When will you be making that decision, sir?
Thank you, press.
Who is that person? Are you considering
Thank you, Press.
Thank you.
All right, Laura, I don't know what happened there. It looks like the pool was in. He said he would take some questions, and now the pool might be going out. Laura? So while we wait for that, he's going to be talking to the governors. One of the things... Did we still have Laura? There we go. Okay, great.
I couldn't quite hear what the reporter was asking, but it sounded like it may have been about tariffs. What made the moment especially ironic was that just before the feed was cut, Laura Trump had been praising the administration's transparency, saying the public should be able to see and hear everything. The Fox hosts even teased the speech as something viewers were about to watch in full, only for the broadcast to suddenly pivot to filler and then cut away entirely. Officially, it may have been because reporters were being ushered out, but given what happened next, with CNN reporting that Trump began shouting, lashing out at the Supreme Court, and using profanity, it's not hard to understand why his team might have wanted the cameras off. Considering the circumstances, the abrupt cutoff wasn't exactly shocking.
About this.
Yeah, Pamela, we still have no official reaction from the White House or President Trump. We are waiting. I am told that they are meeting, discussing how they are going to respond. But we have learned more about what happened in the room when President Trump was with those governors and he learned of the Supreme Court decision. Apparently, the breakfast had been going well. They were working together. And then President Trump became enraged. He started ranting about the decision, not only calling it a disgrace, but started attacking the courts, at one point saying, "These effing courts," but using the actual language there. We know that President Trump does use expletives on quite often when he is enraged in particular. Now, this, of course, comes as this tariff policy, this could not be a bigger decision for President Trump. This could not be a bigger loss for President Trump. Not only is so much of his economic agenda based on these tariffs, so much of his foreign policy is based on these tariffs. He has used these tariffs as leverage in almost every meeting that he has had around the world. He has touted them as the most important part of the economic agenda. So clearly a huge loss, and he recognizes that today. Pamela?
All right, Kristen Holmes.
It wasn't surprising that Trump melted down. Tariffs were just the trigger this time. Sitting through an hour of shouting couldn't have been pleasant for the governors in the room. Meanwhile, Gavin Newsom is calling for Americans to be refunded for the higher costs tied to those tariffs. The core issue is simple. Consumers paid more, and even if tariffs are struck down, prices at major retailers like Walmart and Target don't usually drop back down. That's why critics argue people deserve relief. Because once prices go up, corporations rarely reverse them. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop the blue heart in the comments, and until next time, I will see you soon.